Attention comedy musicians and comedy music fans! The Logan Awards are taking open nominations for outstanding comedy songs and videos released last year for this year's awards. Did you release a comedy song or music video in 2021, or have a favorite comedy song or video that was released then? Then nominate it for the Logan Awards today. The Logan Awards are essentially the Comedy Music Awards, sponsored annually by the Funny Music Project, and are presented in 3 categories: Outstanding Original Comedy Song, Outstanding Parody Song, and Outstanding Comedy Music Video. If you have a comedy song that was released in 2021 that you'd like to nominate for 2022's awards, head to LoganAwards.com and click the Nominations tab at the top. There is a minimum and maximum of 5 nominations per person. Hurry! Nominations close this year on January 22nd. For more details about Logan himself, the awards, and more, check out LoganAwards.com. Help us commemorate this year's best comedy songs and music videos with a trophy, the way they do with every other form of entertainment. But if you want your favorites to win, you have to nominate them by January 22nd, 2022. Get your nominations in now at LoganAwards.com. Brought to you by TheFump.com.
I'm JP Tuesday.
And I'm Kiki Cannon. As lifelong Disney fans, the work of countless talented Disney creatives have shaped our lives.
Now, as the Disney catalog expands, we're taking a journey through film and television to discover if that spark that shaped us as children lives on in adulthood.
Does your favorite Disney media still cast that same spell? Join us as we find out. We are Rewatching the Magic.
Hi, Kiki.
Hi, Tuesday.
Oh, a legend was sung when England was young and knights were brave and bold. We are talking about The Sword in the Stone. We are getting our Arthurian legends on in today's episode.
Disney does the Arthurian legend.
Arthurian stuff has even been part of Disney for a while, even before this movie came out. Like when Disneyland first opened, they have and still have King Arthur's Carousel straight in the middle of Fantasyland. It's like they already at least planned to do something with these characters at some point.
Well, I mean, it's public domain because
yeah. Of course, Sword and Stone, based off T.H. White's novel, the same name, part of the Once and Future King series, which I'm surprised that Disney never went back to this. Like, we only get the beginning of the story. They never did a sequel film. They never did a series. I mean, there's rumors of a live action reboot, possibly for Disney Plus, that's been going around for a few years. But the fact that we've talked about this, The Rescuers was the one that got the sequel, but The Sword and Stone doesn't. All these other movies that could have gotten sequels but they didn't at the time,
Especially because of where and how this film ends, which we'll get into.
Mm-hmm.
It is kind of interesting they never went back to it. Arthurian legends are kind of evergreen. I mean, the Merlin series recently was kind of big over in England.
In current with Disney, the closest we ever got, they had the characters from the Arthurian legend were regulars in Gargoyles.
Arthur Pendragon, King of all Britain, you are needed. We needed the best warrior who ever lived. We needed King Arthur.
That is all very flattering, but would someone kindly tell me what is going on?
Well, yeah, I mean, Gargoyles really did dip into that quite a bit.
That and Shakespeare.
Well, yeah. And I mean, Shakespeare mentioned the Arthurian legend a lot. Just kind of in that sense of it's a reference everybody in England's gonna know. I don't really know why Disney doesn't go back to it. I guess because it can't be, specifically copyrighted that easily. I don't know.
I mean, Winnie the Pooh just entered the public domain, but Disney's version of Winnie the Pooh is still under Disney copyright. Like the red-shirted Winnie the Pooh.
Yeah.
So Yeah, so even their version of Snow White is copyrighted. Like anyone can make a Snow White story, but the look of Snow White that from Disney's movies is copyrighted to them. So you might not be able to copyright the stories, but you can copyright the looks of these specific looks of the characters.
Yeah, and they're gonna try, but this one is a very interesting one because it almost seemed like they wanted this to be the first in a series that just never was. I don't know if it was intended to be, but it really comes off that way when you watch the movie, doesn't it?
There's a lot of sequel bait, especially, when we get to the end and Arthur pulls the sword up from the stone and is crowned the king. Spoiler for this hundreds-year-old story.
The thing is it's called The Sword in the Stone, and you get the writing at the beginning.
Whoever shall pull this sword from this stone, if he be worthy, be granted the powers of Thor, right?
Yeah. And then you see it at the end, and it doesn't feature in the movie anywhere in between that. It's like completely forgotten about until that final moment. You name it after a thing that's in the movie for all of a minute and a half. This is such an interesting film to me because of the way it was set up and presented, because it really is just the childhood of this boy that's gonna be interesting one day, but is not interesting at all right now.
This is the beginning of the legend, this young kid, Arthur, who was destined to become the king. It's implied that Merlin kind of knows something, but it's never straight up said that he knows that this kid's going to become the king. Like he says, this kid's going to do great things. And if you know anything about the story, you know where it's going, but Merlin never lets on, even though he says, oh, I can see the future. I've been to the future and I know what's going to happen.
Well, and they also don't explain how he knows the future in this. I mean, if you know the story, you know that Merlin ages backwards, So he is experiencing time in reverse, basically. So he remembers the future rather than...
I think that would have been a little too complicated to explain in a movie that's meant for children.
I don't, but I think in 1963 they would have thought so. I think now we understand that children are smarter than that, but I think the accepted wisdom of 1963 would be like, well, you can't tell that to children. That would confuse them. Except that, this was a story told to children in, for hundreds and hundreds of...
Yeah.
Well, no, for hundreds and hundreds of years in England, and they seem to just tell them around a fire pit, and they're like, yeah, that makes total sense, but like put it in a motion picture in 1963, and it's like, that's far too complicated for children to understand,
Yeah. And, there's the character of Madame Mim, who gets a lot in this movie that not so much in the book, from what I understand.
Honestly, I have not read the T.H. White novel, so I couldn't tell you.
This film has a couple of notable facts in that this was the final animated film to be released before Walt's death, and this is the first film that the Sherman Brothers wrote songs for.
Well, none of these are what we typically think about with the Sherman Brothers earworms. They're not bad. You can understand where we're going to get the eventual Sherman Brothers earworms from.
We go from Hicketus Ficketus to Supercalifragilisticexpialidocious.
Yeah, you can see. You can see the beginning, and that's what makes the world go round is kind of cute, as is Madame Mim.
Mm-hmm.
while I wouldn't put any of these among their best, some of these, kind of do get your toes tapping a little bit. So you can see why they kept them around.
Also, the factoid, and even as a child, I noticed this, and you Kiki would probably, even if you didn't already know, just by watching this movie, you can tell that Arthur's voice changes multiple times in this movie.
I mean, it changes multiple times in a scene.
And that is because we have 3 actors playing Arthur. Ricky Sorensen, who is the main Arthur voice, was a kid when they brought him in. He went through puberty, and they had to dub other lines with the director's 2 sons. And it is obvious. Like, except sometimes in the same scene, there are 3 different people voicing Arthur. And
yeah, you'll get one line spoken by one actor, and then the very next line will be spoken by a different actor, and then the line after that will be spoken by a different. It is very distracting.
Yeah, even as a kid, I noticed, like, wait, why is Arthur's voice change so many times in this movie? Like, when I figured out what it was about, I thought, oh, the kid must have gone through puberty at some point in this movie, and they just ran with it. But no, it's 3 different actors trying to sound the same, and doesn't work.
It is also very distracting that pretty much everybody in the film is like, oh, this film is set in England. We will use our British voices. And then there is Arthur, who is American all the way throughout. Like, all 3 kids are just like, we're American.
I mean, this movie is made for an American audience, so I assume that they wanted the kid to be American. Walt makes those crazy decisions like that. But yeah, I would say, Arthur should have been British or English.
Yeah, it just, it was,
Merlin in this one definitely gives me proto-genie vibes with his not as overt as Genie in Aladdin, but definitely him making references to what would have been the modern day. I mean, they're not all like pop culture references, but making references to steam-powered trains and planes and television and movies and stuff like that.
He is wearing Chucks at the end of the film for just a little bit, which I kind of loved. When he comes back from his Bermuda vacation, he is wearing Chucks.
Back from Bermuda and the future.
Yeah. Yeah, and it is kind of interesting because there is a theory that the genie is a very similar character to Merlin in that he has maybe not aged backwards in the same way as Merlin, but maybe he has access to all of space and time.
Phenomenal cosmic powers.
Well, yeah, but that he just kind of exists outside of space-time because of his powers, and so he can just kind of see everything.
See it all at once?
Yeah. Whereas Merlin has already experienced our time and is now experiencing Arthur's time and will continue into the past. It is kind of interesting because, at the beginning of the film, he's complaining about how awful he finds the Middle Ages, had that, like, no proper plumbing and
no
can't get a newspaper and can't get electricity and, all that kind of stuff. It makes sense for him to kind of be referencing those things.
And of course, at the end where he travels to the future, I don't know how that would work in this case, but he kind of says, hey, they can have the future. I'd rather be here.
Yeah, which is very different from what he is saying. But, it's kind of like us in a way, because sometimes we reminisce about our childhood and stuff. But I think if you sent me back to 1995 or whatever, I'd be like, oh my goodness, I am so bored without my phone.
I actually have to rewind this tape to listen to that song again instead of just pressing a button on my phone.
Yeah. Or, I have to wait for a song to come on the radio or whatever,
Yeah.
I have to wait for my friend to get home before I can talk to them. Also, my friends are 3 people I know who live within 5 miles of me.
Instead of I talk to this guy halfway across the country or the world.
Yeah, it's
today.
like, somebody I know in Australia, like that would be, yeah. So yeah, I think we're all kind of like that. So I kind of feel for Merlin when he comes back and he's like, they can have it, because I think it's slightly different, but I think our nostalgia for different times is kind of thing. I could do without the global pandemic though.
Yeah.
So
I can imagine that.
Maybe take me back like 5 or 6 years.
Yeah.
Like 2015, 2014. I could go about then.
I can do that too, yeah.
Yeah. Like 2014. I think we're good. Like just perpetual 2014.
And in terms of the story in this movie, even though we see and meet Arthur's adopted father, Sir Ector, and his adopted brother, Kay, we never learn about his past. We never learn about Arthur's lineage and why he was able to pull the sword from the stone. And you won't know unless you're actually pausing the movie during this opening sequence with the book, as you actually get the name of Arthur's father, Uther Pendragon, who was the King of England at the beginning of the story. So it's very weird that they get to, he's an orphan, he's not of pure blood, therefore he cannot be king. When it turns out he is. He is the son of the previous king.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's one of those things of, this leaves a lot of stuff out of the story for the sake of the runtime, and for the sake of, we don't think kids would understand the story if we actually told the story.
I mean, I'm kind of wondering how Disney would have handled Morgan Le Fay.
Wrongly?
Probably.
Let's go with wrongly.
That whole situation.
Yeah.
Okay, imagine Guinevere.
Probably, once again, wrongly. Yeah.
Oh, the love triangle.
Yeah, like I said, probably wrongly. The interesting thing is that I think that it works better for a story like this for kids, for it to be just kind of a surprise to everyone around him, except for maybe Merlin. You're a nobody, Arthur, and now you're a somebody. In the story, as it's kind of traditionally told, there were people who knew of Arthur's lineage and were protecting him, and made sure that he was kept safe for people who were trying to wipe out the lineage and all that kind of stuff. So it wasn't like nobody knew.
In this version of events, Sir Ector treating Arthur more like a servant than a son. Which, I mean, it's weird because when we first see Sir Ector, he says, I adopted this boy, I'm his foster father, but at the same time, kind of treating him like a servant,
Again, it's one of those things of the time. We would think of it differently, but it's more of a thing of, yes, I am responsible, but also you're not in the lineage of my family. You're not going to inherit. I
mean, Arthur said, I mentioned it, but Arthur does say, he cannot be a knight because he is not
of noble blood.
Yeah, of noble blood. Again, we find out that if you read the story, you find out that he is, but for the purposes of this story, as Disney are presenting it.
Yeah, and the thing is once again in the original story, he has to be treated that way so no one will suspect him.
Fair.
You can't suspect the servant boy of being the hidden king. It's one of those things of, you don't treat royalty like that. And if he was raised to the level of a knight, then people are going to start being like, well, then who's your parents and where's your lineage and where's your, people are going to start, people are going to start having questions. And then that puts you in danger of assassination. So in the original story, it's more of a matter of protection. Arthur doesn't know it, but it is kind of there to protect him because nobody suspects the servant boy. Nobody in a position of power ever suspects the guy that cleans the chamber pot, Yeah. It's just not a thing. You're invisible at that point. So it makes sense in the original tale. In this one and to a modern audience, you see Sir Ector and you're like, oh, why kind of treating him badly, but then also being like, you're like a son to me and stuff. It makes more sense with the context that they never really give it in the animated film.
And, the Ector's preferred treatment of Kay,
Yeah. Arthur does kind of, in the original story, he does treat Kay as a brother. Once he becomes king, he does bring him on board as a knight of the round table and stuff. I mean, it is, it's not like he forgets Kay. So Kay maybe gets better than he deserves in some, because he is remembered as kind of, bit of a bully.
Yeah.
So the portrayal in this is not altogether inaccurate. Arthur, for all his faults, does, remember the people that were with him.
We're never given a reason of the nickname Wart. I never read the book, so I don't know if there's an actual reason for it. But, my name is Arthur, but everyone calls me Wart. Why do they call you Wart? Is there a reason? Do you have warts on your face or something? Maybe it's because he's just.
Remember that
maybe it's because he's just short. I don't know. But yeah, I mean, obviously, Merlin sees something in Arthur, whether he knows that he's going to be the king or not. He plans to give the boy an education, especially when he learns about his status as a squire. He'll never be a knight. He's always going to be this low class squire. Says, no, you can be more. All you need is a proper education. And then decides that, well, I'm going to be your tutor. I'm going to teach you everything there is to know about the world and some stuff about the future. And then you're going to become someone great. I mean, if we're going by the idea that Merlin knows that Arthur is the future king or the rightful king, then yeah, he would want to give Wart a proper royal education so that he will be prepared when that time comes. But it's kind of all over the place, Maybe it's me.
Yeah, the movie doesn't really portray this super well either. I guess it's more of the idea of, you want to learn to see things from all perspectives.
Yeah, because it's never, even though he straight up says an academic education, Merlin's teachings is more of life lessons than anything. It's not until Archimedes takes over the education that Arthur starts actually learning how to read and write.
It is kind of interesting that he does try to teach him the perspective of a fish, the perspective of a bird,
Squirrel.
the squirrel, which is such a bizarre scene.
Yeah.
But it is kind of fascinating that he talks about the instincts of the animal.
Yeah, that's a weird one, because he says, you've never been a fish before, therefore you don't have the instincts of a fish, so you don't know how to swim as a fish. But then he gets the instinct to eat a bug. Oh, that's just instinct, but you said it didn't have any instincts. And he kind of waves us, well, let's continue the lesson.
Yeah, and they never explain that, because when they do the bird lesson with Archimedes, at first he's teaching things of like, don't fight the currents, go with the currents. And then all of a sudden it's just like, oh, instinct kicked in. And now I know how to fly. It seems kind of the same thing with the squirrel as well.
Look before you leap, I guess, is supposed to be the lesson here.
But he does much better as a squirrel when he is just running for his life and not looking before he leaps.
Yeah. And then there's that whole scene with the girl squirrel.
Which is very Pepe Le Pew and uncomfortable.
Yeah. Again, this is 1963. So the Pepe Le Pew cartoons would have already been known at the time.
Yeah.
But, I mean, yeah. They kind of go through, when a squirrel meets its mate, it mates for life. And, like, he's trying to communicate with her. It's like, hey, I'm not really a squirrel. I'm a boy. I'm not a real squirrel. Please don't flirt with me. Please don't.
I mean, was the fact that he didn't speak squirrel not a giveaway to her?
Yeah. Oh, he's cute, therefore the language isn't an issue. Those kind of relationships don't tend to last, though.
I don't know. The thing is that both of the squirrels that they meet are really aggressive like that. So I guess the point of the movie is that female squirrels are just really aggressive and refuse to take no for an answer.
Which kind of goes back to my question of how Disney would have handled Guinevere.
I don't know. It only really works for squirrels though, because we really only see one human woman, and it's Madame Mim.
Yeah.
I mean, two, because we see the washerwoman in the castle, I guess.
But it's like
so human women are completely asexual, and female squirrels will not take no for an answer.
And his thing is, oh yeah, she's also a redhead. It's like, I mean, that's a whole different conversation right there.
And maybe let's not have it, because, but it's one of those, like, why is this scene even in the movie? The thing is that bravo to this chick for being really brave, though. I mean, Squirrel Chick is really brave.
Yeah, there's the wolf who has been chasing Arthur this entire movie, trying to eat Arthur as a human and trying to eat Arthur as a squirrel.
Yeah.
But this girl squirrel just, predator be damned. She's going to protect her man.
Yeah. I mean, bravo to her for her bravery. But, at the same time.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, and we never come back to this. We never get it's like Arthur is turned back into a human. He tries to apologize to her. He even says, I hope, if only you could understand me, I could apologize to you. And she's just brokenhearted, and we leave it at that. We never come back to this. This squirrel is just brokenhearted, and since Merlin says they choose a mate for life, does this squirrel never mate with anyone? Ever?
You almost kind of just want to see her living in the castle, just kind of pining over King Arthur for the rest of her days.
Like, the squirrel just shows up every once in a while, and Arthur looks like, oh, she's back. Honey, who is this? Guinevere? Don't, Guinevere. It's a long story.
He just goes out to the forest and just leaves some acorns in a little pile next to the tree until she dies, then buries her with full state honors. Yeah.
This whole movie feels like, we've talked about this before, like a lot of the early Disney movies don't feel like movies, and more that you feel like it's a collection of shorts just starring the same characters. That's what this movie feels like.
Yeah,
like,
this is less a coherent plot and more just a series of shorts stitched together. Yeah.
That it works against the movie because there really isn't a central plot. It's just a series of things that happen.
You're right. But in the midst of all this, what little plot we have is that a guy from London arrives with the news that there's going to be a New Year's Day tournament in London, and that the winner of the tournament will be crowned king. So Kay is going to be knighted before the tournament, and then he's going to enter the tournament in hopes that he will win and become king. And Arthur is going to be his squire. Yay! So, prolonged training montage.
Yeah, and that seems to be like a trigger for Merlin. It's like, no, you are not going to be a squire. Don't waste your life on that. I'm going to teach you to be better. Which is the whole point of him teaching Arthur anything in the first place, is I don't want you to become a squire. I want you to become something better, something more. Again, he never lets on that he's going to be the king. Maybe he's not supposed to, whatever. But it's just this, it's like, if you want to take this into modern day, is like a parent saying, you're going to be a doctor, you're going to be a lawyer. Like, hey, I just need a job. I'm going to, work at this restaurant for a little while. It's the best I can do with my education level and all that stuff.
Yeah. The interesting thing is that during the bird lesson, we get the thing where a hawk chases Arthur because Arthur is just a tiny little sparrow, and he crash lands into Madame Mim's house.
The closest thing to a villain in this movie. An hour into this movie, and we finally meet the villain.
Who is not really a villain. She's just kind of a witch who has beef with Merlin, I guess. We don't get any explanation of this woman. She's just a witch, and she decides to have a wizard battle with Merlin.
Yeah, there's things here. It's probably explained in one of the books, but it's like the minute Arthur says Merlin is the greatest wizard who ever lived, she's just, no, I'm the greatest wizard who ever lived. And if you keep saying something about Merlin, I'm going to kill you. I'm going to kill you anyway. Merlin shows up and they have their wizard's duel, which is my favorite part of the movie, honestly. It's like, growing up watching this movie over and over again on TV, it really is the last half hour that is the most interesting in this entire movie. Of an hour and a half movie. Mim has a pretty interesting villain song, honestly. It's not top tier villain song, but it works. So we get the Wizard's Duel. Again, to me, is the coolest thing in the whole movie. And I love how Mim kind of say, hey, we got to have rules, we got to have regulations. And I just love how she says, no pink dragons, and then immediately breaks it by becoming a purple dragon.
I do like that thing, like
loopholes.
No turning into a pink dragon. Okay, I'll turn into a purple dragon. Technically,
she didn't break the rules. She found a loophole. But I must say that the animation, it feels like most of the animation budget went into the Wizard's Duel. There are times where it's just a puff of smoke and they turn into a different animal. But when you see the actual when they animate the actual morphing of one animal into another, it looks really, really good. Granted, a lot of these animal models are probably from past films. I mean, the crocodile's probably from Peter Pan, the turtle's probably from another movie, but the animation, the transition animation from one animal to another is really good. Like when Mim goes from the alligator to the fox, or from like when she transforms into the snake and all that stuff, or when Merlin goes from the caterpillar to the sea lion.
Yeah, I really do like those transformations as well, and the animation in this, like you said, is really top notch for this film. All the little magical effects, the little dusts and sparkles and all that around it.
No computers for this one though. That was all hand drawn.
Oh yeah, and the underwater effects as well in the moat. We didn't really talk about it, but the shimmers and light effects of the underwater, really nice. Mm-hmm. But yeah, this whole battle, really interesting, really good. And the final bit where she turns into the purple dragon and she captures Merlin and then he disappears, but he doesn't disappear. He has turned himself into a germ and infects her with an illness that is bad enough that she'll be down for a few days, but not so bad that, it will do anything permanent to her.
She has to quarantine for 5 days, it'll be fine. Take
and
a negative
she'll
test.
have to wear a mask for another 5 days until she gets a negative test, I mean.
Yeah.
But the it's an interesting little scene, and it's his way of teaching Arthur that you don't have to do everything with brute strength and with a battle, but you can do things with knowledge. Mim doesn't know about germ theory, so she doesn't know about that was even an option.
And it's also in this battle, Mim only turns into predators. And Merlin only turns into prey. Using his again, he turns into a bigger animal to squish her, but it's all about using his brain rather than brawn, and Mim relying on brawn as a predator to win the battle, and it ultimately costed her because Merlin turning into that germ.
Yeah. And he does things like turn into, mice and caterpillars and things like that. Yeah.
It's a joke, and it's probably one of the best jokes in the movie is, Mim turns into an elephant, so Merlin turns into a mouse to scare her.
Yeah.
It is one of the oldest gags in these kind of stories, and I think they proved it wasn't true. Mythbusters did it like years ago, but for the purposes of a kids movie, it makes sense, it works, and it's still the best joke in this whole movie.
It's interesting because we talk about the importance of, germs and illness, and that's what ends up changing the course with Arthur. Due to him standing up for Merlin, who has been using magic all around the castle, and that, Hector doesn't like that, so he forbids it, and Arthur stands up for him and gets himself so many demerits that he's taken away from his job as squire, and Merlin is happy about this and Arthur is not.
Yeah, Arthur's devastated because he really wanted to go to London on New Year's Day and be part of this competition, even if it was as a squire.
Yeah. But the guy who has replaced Arthur ends up coming down with mumps at the last minute and cannot go. He has to be quarantined and, stay homesick. So Kay is knighted and Arthur has to step in and be squire. And Arthur is so happy and Merlin is so mad. You're gonna give up everything for all this stupid war stuff and, you're throwing your life away to be a servant. You could be so much more.
Yeah, and he's just had it with Arthur. It's like all this stuff I've been teaching you, and none of it has sunk in. And you're just going to keep on going back to this squire business when I'm trying to make you something more. And he's out of there. Blow me to Bermuda. And I actually slowed down the animation on this when I'm watching the movie. And the minute he says the word "blow me to Bermuda," the animation on Merlin's face changes. It's like, oh, what did I do?
Oops.
Like when he starts to take off, he's like, I didn't mean to do that. Like in a fit of anger, and now he has, which blows him not only does it blow him to Bermuda, but it blows him to the future. What point in the future, we don't know. Again, since the actual story has Merlin living life backwards, how does that work?
Yeah, but
I don't know.
It's somewhere with daiquiris and chucks and Hawaiian shirts and cargo pants because
somewhere in the 1960s.
Yeah, probably. It's probably in the 1960s. But I like the thing where he blasts off and then Arthur goes, "Where did he go?" And Archimedes says, "Well, Bermuda, probably." Arthur kind of just shrugs and goes on to the tournament, and they get to the final round of the tournament, which is going to be swords. They've done all the other competitions, and Arthur realizes that he hasn't brought Kay's sword with him.
They left it at the hotel, yeah.
Yeah, he left it at the inn, and the doors to the inn are locked, and he can't get in, and
everyone has gone to the tournament.
Yeah.
There's no one in the inn to take care of the inn, which is very bad business.
But, probably good because you don't want things to get stolen while everybody's at the tournament. But Archimedes notices, hey, there's a sword over here in this anvil. Don't know why it's there, but maybe you can grab it. And Arthur just, oh yeah.
Kay needs a sword. There's a sword.
Yeah.
And the beginning of the movie implies that the sword just suddenly appeared in the center of London by act of God. And since no one could pull it, they kind of forgot about it, and it ends up in the back of the inn. And as Arthur touches the sword, you hear the angels singing, and he's like, "What the heck is going on here?"
And Archimedes is like, we should probably just leave that alone.
But Kay needs a sword, so angel singing be damned. I don't know if that line made sense, but I'm saying it anyway. He pulls the sword out as the angels sing and brings the sword to Kay. This is not my sword. Got stuff written on it. And they see that it is the legendary sword in the stone. Someone has pulled the sword from the stone. Therefore, we don't need this tournament anymore. Sorry, finalist. You've all this works for nothing. We're gonna find out what happens to the sword. But apparently, the legend of the sword is still alive and well in London, because everyone starts murmuring the sword got pulled from the stone. No one has ever done it. So they said, "Hey, you didn't pull this out." Yeah, one of the big running themes in this movie is that Sir Ector doesn't believe anything that Arthur says. Like, oh, I was turned into a fish, I was turned into a bird, I was turned into a squirrel. Merlin does all these great magic things, and he says, you're making these stories up. More demerits for you because you keep lying about where you've been and what you're doing. And the final thing is, this is one lie too many. You're gonna prove to me that you pulled this sword out. Rather than let Arthur re-pull the sword out, Kay just says, you know what? Once it's been pulled, anyone can pull it out. So I'm gonna pull the sword out, and doesn't budge. And then suddenly everybody in the town starts trying to help Kay pull the sword out until the messenger from early in the movie says, hey, this isn't right. This isn't fair. The boy said he pulled it out once. Let the boy do it again. And a couple of other people said, yeah, you're right. The boy said he pulled it out. Let him pull it out again. And he does. Ordained by the heavens themselves that Arthur Pendragon, is the true king of England. Which, of course, starts to sucking up. Please forgive me, boy. I didn't mean to be mean to you. Which implies that Sir Ector didn't know. Now, I never read the legends. I don't know if Ector actually knew or not, but for the purpose of this movie, he doesn't know. And begs forgiveness of the king.
Yeah, I mean, this very much says... this movie very much says that Ector didn't know. They kind of appear to almost immediately crown him.
Yeah, you see the king, like, it seems to be like that day he's there, still in the squire outfit with the robe on him and the crown on his head with the sword.
Yeah.
Side note, this is not Excalibur, I assume. Wasn't Excalibur given to him by the lady in the lake?
Well, it's one of those things where the legends kind of differ. Some of them say that this is the Excalibur. Some of them say that Excalibur was the sword from the lake. Some of them want to be like, well, no, he had this sword first, and then this sword broke, and then the Lady of the Lake gave him a different sword that was named Excalibur to be, so, but it's one of those things of many legends were told orally, and they just kind of changed by whoever was telling them at the time. Things just kind of get a bit fuzzy when you've got a story this old. It's one of those things that people will, find their hill and die on it. But depending on who's telling the story, it goes one or the other. And sometimes he's got two different swords. Sometimes he's got the sword that he pulls from the stone, and sometimes he's got Excalibur that was given to him by the Lady of the Lake. So, yeah.
But anyway, Arthur does not like this idea of being king. He doesn't want to be king. He doesn't know how to be a king. He just wants to have his regular life back. So he tries to bail, and not going to happen because the entire castle is surrounded by people saying, "Hail King Arthur! Long live the king! Long live the king!" So he's kind of stuck in this situation.
Yeah. And he says, I wish Merlin were here. And that apparently is the magic spell to bring Merlin back from Bermuda.
With his chucks and Hawaiian shirt.
Yeah, with his chucks and Hawaiian shirt and his daiquiri or margarita or whatever he's got. And he's like, oh, yeah, king, you were meant to be king. I knew I forgot something. Well, you're gonna be King Arthur and Round Table. And he's like, Round Table? Oh, what, you want Square? They're gonna write books about you and eventually movies. What's a movie? It's like a TV. Okay. And then the movie just ends.
Yeah, this feels like a prequel to another movie, Like, this feels like the prequel that comes out after the main King Arthur story.
Or it feels like tune in next week, same Arthurian time, same Arthurian channel, and then it just never happened.
Yeah, I mean, Disney could have gone. Like I said, Disney may not have done the legend right, but it feels like there's more that at least someone involved with this movie wanted to tell.
Come back next week for the interesting movie that we forgot to make.
To be continued in 10 years in Monty Python and the Holy Grail.
Who are you? We are the knights who say... No, not the knights who say ni. The same!
Ooh, I wonder how Disney would have handled the Holy Grail story. That's interesting.
Well, yeah, because they tried to not... Well, until Hunchback of Notre Dame, at least, they tried not to get too into, like, religious stuff.
Yeah.
So, you know.
Like, they never mention... They never see heaven. They see the heavens. So they try a lot to not have any religious denominations mentioned in this version.
Well, they say by Jove a lot.
Yeah.
Which is, you know, a religious reference.
Yeah. But, you know, it feels weird. Like, this is only part of the story. And even as a kid, like, okay, I want to see the rest of this story. I want to see where, I mean, and I knew there were more stories of King Arthur, that he was not, you know, this is not the end of the story. But that it's just really weird that Disney never, I mean, I get it. Walt was very much anti-sequel. I get that. Always do something new. The famous line, "You can't follow pigs with pigs," in reference to the Three Little Pigs cartoon, and they want to do an entire series of Three Little Pigs cartoons that didn't go anywhere, that, you know, were not very popular. So no sequels for their animated projects. But like I said, Walt would pass away just not long after this movie. Like, they could have easily said, you know, hey, Sword in the Stone did some well. There's more Arthurian stories to tell. We can do Sword in the Stone too. But they never go in that direction until we get to The Rescuers Down Under. It always perplexes me that of all the movies that got the first sequel, it was The Rescuers. And we discuss all of that in our Rescuers episode. If you want to go back if you want to go back to that, it's really weird that they never continued the story. They never went back to the Arthurian legends. You know, at least in terms of animated film. I mean, like I said, we've talked about gargoyles and stuff like that. But, you know, does that mean that this story takes place in the same universe as gargoyles?
No. Even as goofy as gargoyles got sometimes, this is way too goofy for that.
So yeah, in terms of, again, like I said, in the parks they'd had King Arthur's Carousel with the Sword in the Stone in front of it, and for a time they would have kids come up and try to take the sword out, and they don't do it anymore. I believe because someone actually broke it. Apparently they had an adult try to pull the sword out and broke the mechanism and pulled it out. So they don't do it anymore.
Why can't we have nice things?
But you can still take a picture with it out and, you know, pretend to take the sword out, and it doesn't move, but, you know. So anyway, and Merlin, for a while, was a regular character in the parks, usually as part of this Sword in the Stone ceremony. But we never actually got Arthur in the parks until 2020. Right at the beginning of 2020, Disney premiered their new parade at Disneyland called Magic Happens. And there is a float which features Merlin and Arthur in his little squire outfit holding the sword. And it's just really weird that in 2020 they decided that the movie that needed its own float was The Sword in the Stone.
Yeah, seems a bit late for that, but...
And sadly, like a month after the parade premiered, COVID happened and everything shut down. And they have yet to bring back this parade in the parks. And it's also really weird that they waited until 2020 to bring the character of Arthur into the parks, even though they've had Merlin hanging around for all these years.
This is such a weird movie to me. I don't know that I can really say more than that.
Like, I mean, this movie I would watch this movie all the time as a kid. Like I said, Robin Hood and some of the other movies of that era, these were just the movies that aired on TV the most. So these are the movies that kind of formed our childhood growing up. That these 60s, 70s, late Walt, post Walt movies were just the ones that aired on TV the most. For me, I have the great memories of watching this movie, and as a collection of shorts, it's great, but there's not really a central plot throughout this whole movie. And I feel really bad saying that. For the Xerox animation of the time, it's not terrible. In some places it is. But like I said, the Wizard's Duel kind of still holds up. But most of the movie kind of doesn't. Especially the dishwashing scene kind of doesn't look so great. I was going to mention that, you have a 4K TV, so you're watching this on a 4K TV. How did that go for you?
It's not the greatest animation, but it looks better than some of the ones that we've talked about in that style. So it holds up a little bit better. I will say that this has a lot of Sorcerer's Apprentice-y kind of moments in this, Be our guest kind of moments. So, it's very, very Disney wants dishes to dance kind of. That's a lot of alliteration. But, it's that very kitschy Disney, household stuff moves and dances around style.
Yeah, the Higginus scene with the moving is, as a kid, that was one of my favorite scenes, just because of the moving of all of the objects and shrinking down into the bag, and that would make moving a lot easier. Imagine packing for a trip, and then all you have to do is say a magic spell, and all of your belongings can fit into a single small bag that you can carry onto your flight instead of checking it in.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's infinitely useful, but my point was that not that it's bad or that I dislike it, but that it's very particularly Disney. In that there are several scenes in this movie where you're like, that's Disney, especially of this era. Merlin's whole thing with the sugar pot, the whole bit with him enchanting the dishes and the stuff to do themselves, and it's extremely Disney of this time. I'm not saying that it's a bad thing, but it is a very particular style that you would not see in a different movie or a different company. And if you did, you would immediately go, boy, they're trying to rip off Disney.
So let's ask the question, does the Sword in the Stone have the magic, Kiki?
I mean, it's a difficult one because it's one that, like you, I remember watching this one as a kid. I will say I didn't watch it as often as you did as a kid.
Yeah, because you probably did. Yeah, we kind of mentioned this. You did not have the Disney Channel growing up, so you had to wait for this movie to air on regular TV. Meanwhile, me, who did grow up with the Disney Channel, would probably watch this movie once a week.
Yeah, I definitely did not watch it that often, but this was probably like a once a year watch for me.
And considering the the climax takes place on New Year's Day, probably around the holidays.
Yeah. A little bit of magic, but it's never going to be one of my favorites. And honestly, rewatching it as an adult, I find it more boring than I did as a kid. Sorry.
It's fine. I kind of with you. Like I said, this as an adult looking at this movie, as a kid watching this movie, it's great because here's this kid, he's having all of these adventures with magic and it's fun. But as an adult, it's like there's no plot. There's nothing going on here until the last half hour of the movie. Like you can cut the first hour of this movie and miss nothing.
I would have liked to have seen whatever movie this is a prequel for, though.
Yeah, I'm kind of wondering what Disney would have gone with, what direction, or would they have made up. I mean, they could have made up their own story. These characters are public domain. But I'm going to say, as rewatching this movie, as much as I do have a soft spot for this one, it kind of doesn't hold up as much as I remember it doing. And I recently had a rewatch like a year ago of this. So it's like, it feels like the more of you watch it, the less not to say the less I like it, but the less I have the same feeling that I did watching this as a kid. So I really don't want to do it, but I'm going to have to say no magic. Sorry, Merlin. Like, parts of this movie is good. I can watch parts of this movie. Like I said, I can watch the final half hour of this movie and greatly enjoy it. But the entire hour and a half of it is a bit of a slog to go through.
I mean, I agree. There's a couple of parts, that I like. The Madam Mim sequence, a little bit of magic there, but yeah, that's kind of mostly no magic. Yeah.
So yeah, I feel, and maybe if Disney is making a remake of this, maybe they can do something different with it, make it a little bit more exciting, probably reshape the events to give it a better overall plot. I don't know. We'll see if that project ever happens or not, because it's been rumored for about 7 years now, so we'll see. But yeah, I think that's everything we can talk about The Sword and the Stone. So let's move on to next week. A few days before we recorded this episode, we got the news that, as everyone has gotten the news, of the passing of the legendary Betty White. Just a few weeks short of her 100th birthday. New Year's Eve, how would that be? You get up on New Year's Eve and to find out that Betty White had passed away. Most people were thought that this was a joke. Like, you're joking. No. Betty White can't be dead. Betty White, oh no, you're not joking. And it's like, this was like the collective world just came together on New Year's Eve and just did it in celebration of Betty White. You have to be an exceptional person to live to the age of 99, 2 weeks short of turning 100, and people will say you died too soon.
We could only think of one way to honor her, so we're moving up something on the schedule. We had something different planned for next week, but when we heard the news, we thought, we've had a retrospective planned for a while now, and this seems like the perfect time to do it. So next week, Golden Girls.
On Betty White's 100th birthday, I cannot think of a better time to do it.
Nope. So come back. We've picked several episodes that we want to talk about that kind of hopefully showcase some of the best of the series. And we're gonna go through one of the best series of all time and talk a little bit about Betty, but talk about just 4 incredible women that somehow got to make an incredible TV series together. So,
and that Disney was producing this show. Touchstone Media, Buena Vista Media, they own it, which means Disney owns it. In some countries, this is on Disney Plus. So
yeah, and in the U.S., it's on Hulu, also owned by Disney. So we're going to talk about it.
So come back next week for our retrospective on the Golden Girls and our tribute show to Betty White. And we will talk to you all then. Bye.
Bye. Don't let the magic stop here.
Join our conversation online on Facebook at Rewatching the Magic.
Twitter at Rewatch the Magic.
And of course, new episodes every week at rewatchingthemagic.podbean.com.
Remember, the magic is for everyone.
It only stops if you let it.